In 1831, Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brilliant philosophers in human history, scheduled his university lectures at the exact same time as Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, the most popular professor in all of Berlin. Hegel's lecture hall was packed with hundreds of adoring students. Schopenhauer's lecture hall was almost completely empty. Some accounts say only 5 students showed up. Others say 2. One account says nobody came at all. Hegel was celebrated. Schopenhauer was ignored. Hegel was called a genius by his generation. Schopenhauer was called a bitter, irrelevant failure. Here's what happened next. Hegel's philosophy was slowly dismantled over the following decades, criticized, disproven, and largely abandoned by serious thinkers. Schopenhauer's work, written in near total obscurity, became the foundation of modern psychology, influenced Nietzsche, Freud, Jung, Einstein, and Tolstoy, and is now considered among the most important philosophical contributions in human history. The man the crowd loved was forgotten. The man the crowd ignored changed the world. And this experience, this lifelong confrontation with what Schopenhauer called the overwhelming stupidity of the masses, led him to develop the most brutally honest framework for how intelligent people should deal with unintelligent ones. What I'm about to share with you is not polite. It's not politically correct. And most people will never hear it, because the truth Schopenhauer uncovered makes almost everyone uncomfortable. Here's what this video is really about. It's not about feeling superior. It's not about looking down on people. It's about understanding a fundamental truth that Schopenhauer spent his entire life documenting. Most of the frustration, conflict, and exhaustion intelligent people experience comes not from the world being hard, but from constantly engaging with people who operate on a fundamentally different cognitive level. I'm drawing from Schopenhauer's The Art of Being Right, The World as Will and Representation, his essays and aphorisms, and modern cognitive psychology, specifically research on the Dunning-Kruger effect, cognitive load theory, and asymmetric insight illusion. By the end of this video, you will have 7 specific strategies that intelligent people use to navigate a world filled with people who will never understand them. Let's begin. Strategy 1. Accept the cognitive gap without resentment. Schopenhauer wrote, "Everyone takes the limits of his own vision for the limits of the world." This single sentence explains 90% of the frustration intelligent people experience. When you see further than the person you're talking to, you assume the conversation is about facts. It's not. It's about cognitive limits. Modern psychology calls this the curse of knowledge, a cognitive bias documented by economists Colin Cameron, George Lowenstein, and Martin Weber in 1989. Once you understand something, you become neurologically incapable of imagining what it's like to not understand it. Your brain literally cannot simulate their ignorance. This creates a permanent communication gap. You speak from depth. They hear from surface. You reference context. They hear confusion. And the frustration you feel isn't because they're choosing to be ignorant, it's because their cognitive architecture physically cannot process what yours can. Schopenhauer's method was radical acceptance. He didn't resent the gap. He stopped expecting it to close. He adjusted his expectations of every interaction based on who he was speaking to, not who he wished they were. The strategy: stop being frustrated that people don't understand you. Start accepting that most people can't. Not won't. Can't. This single shift eliminates more psychological suffering than any other. And this leads directly to strategy 2, because once you accept the gap, you need to know what to do with it. Strategy 2. Never argue with someone operating below your level. Schopenhauer wrote an entire book on this, The Art of Being Right. But here's the irony most people miss. The book is not a guide on how to win arguments. It's a catalog of 38 dirty tricks that stupid people use to win arguments against intelligent people. And his conclusion after documenting all 38? Don't argue at all. Here's why. Intelligent people argue with logic. Unintelligent people argue with volume, emotion, repetition, and personal attacks. These are not the same game. You're playing chess. They're flipping the board. And in every argument with someone cognitively beneath you, one of 2 outcomes occurs. Either you lose, which is humiliating, or you win, which accomplishes nothing because they won't understand why they lost anyway. Schopenhauer's own words: "To argue with a person who has renounced the use of reason is like administering medicine to the dead." A 2019 study published in the journal Cognition found that people with lower cognitive ability are significantly more likely to confuse confidence with competence. They don't just disagree with you, they genuinely believe their position is stronger because they feel more certain about it. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect at its most dangerous. Incompetence generating an unshakable confidence that intelligence could never match. The strategy: When you identify that someone is arguing from emotion, ego, or cognitive limitation rather than logic, disengage immediately. Not rudely, calmly. I think we see this differently. Then stop. Every word after that is wasted energy. Now strategy 3 explains something even more uncomfortable, because sometimes the stupid person isn't a stranger. Sometimes they're someone you love. Strategy 3, the art of strategic simplification. Not every unintelligent person in your life can be avoided. Your boss, your family members, your co-workers. Sometimes you must communicate with people who cannot reach your level. Schopenhauer didn't pretend otherwise. He adapted. He called it meeting people where they are, not condescension but translation. Speaking in terms their cognitive framework can process. Removing abstraction. Replacing nuance with directness. Trading complexity for clarity. Einstein practiced this instinctively. When asked to explain relativity, he didn't recite equations. He said, "When you sit with a nice girl for 2 hours, it seems like 2 minutes. When you sit on a hot stove for 2 minutes, it seems like 2 hours. That's relativity." He didn't lower his intelligence. He translated it. The idea remained brilliant. The delivery became accessible. Cognitive load theory, developed by John Sweller, explains why this works. Every brain has a limited processing capacity. When you overload someone with information beyond their capacity, they don't learn, they shut down. Resistance increases. Comprehension drops to zero. And they walk away thinking you're the one who doesn't make sense. The strategy, with people who cannot match your depth, simplify without dumbing down. Use stories instead of theories. Use analogies instead of abstractions. Use one clear sentence instead of 10 technical ones. You preserve your intelligence while making it receivable. This is where it gets dark, because strategy 4 reveals why most intelligent people are actually suffering more than anyone realizes. Strategy 4, protect your cognitive energy like a finite resource. Schopenhauer lived alone. He ate dinner alone almost every night. He walked the same routes with his poodle. He avoided social events. He declined invitations. Biographers describe him as isolated. Critics called him miserable. He wasn't miserable. He was protecting his most valuable resource, mental energy. Research on ego depletion, pioneered by Roy Baumeister, found that willpower and cognitive performance draw from a limited daily reservoir. Every interaction that requires you to translate your thoughts, manage someone's emotions, or suppress your frustration drains this reservoir. For intelligent people, conversations with cognitively mismatched individuals are exponentially more draining than conversations with intellectual equals. You're not just talking, you're constantly monitoring their comprehension, adjusting your vocabulary, predicting their misunderstandings, and managing your own frustration. This is invisible labor that most people don't even realize they're performing. Schopenhauer understood this 500 years before the research confirmed it. His solitude wasn't loneliness, it was resource management. The strategy, audit every interaction in your life. Who drains you? Who energizes you? Who challenges you intellectually? Who forces you to shrink? Reduce exposure to the drains. Increase exposure to the challengers. Your cognitive energy is finite. Stop spending it on people who can't even tell you're spending it. Pay close attention to strategy 5, because this one will change how you handle every social situation for the rest of your life. Strategy 5, the observer's advantage. Schopenhauer spent years studying human behavior not as a participant but as a detached observer. He watched people argue in cafes. He studied social dynamics at dinner parties. He analyzed political debates as if watching a nature documentary. And he discovered something that transformed his frustration into fascination. Stupid people are extraordinarily predictable. He writes, "The cheapest sort of pride is national pride. For if a man is proud of his own nation, it argues that he has no qualities of his own of which he can be proud." He wasn't just making an observation. He was cataloging patterns. And once you start cataloging patterns of unintelligent behavior, the frustration transforms into data. Modern psychology calls this psychological distancing, studied by Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan. When you shift from first-person emotional engagement to third-person observation, your amygdala activation decreases significantly. Stress drops. Clarity increases. You stop being a victim of the interaction and become a scientist studying it. The strategy: next time you're in a conversation with someone who is frustrating you intellectually, shift your internal perspective. Stop thinking, "Why can't this person understand me?" and start thinking, "What can I learn about human cognition from this interaction?" This single shift turns every frustrating conversation into a free psychology lecture, delivered by an unwitting subject. And this connects to Strategy 6, which Schopenhauer considered his most important insight on human intelligence. Strategy 6, stop broadcasting, start narrowcasting. Schopenhauer spent decades writing masterworks that the public ignored. His books didn't sell. His lectures were empty. His ideas were dismissed by the academic establishment of his time. For most of his life he was considered a failure. But Schopenhauer wasn't trying to reach everyone. He writes in his later essays, "My works are not written for the masses. They are written for the few who are capable of genuine thought." This wasn't arrogance. This was targeting. There's a concept in communication theory called audience design, studied by Herbert Clark at Stanford. The most effective communicators don't broadcast identical messages to everyone. They design their communication for a specific cognitive audience. They speak to the people who can receive the message and deliberately exclude those who can't. Schopenhauer practiced this religiously. He didn't simplify his philosophy for mass appeal. He didn't water down his ideas. He wrote at the highest level he could and waited for the right minds to find him. It took decades. But when those minds arrived, Nietzsche, Wagner, Freud, Tolstoy, the impact was civilizational. The strategy: stop trying to make everyone understand you. Identify the 5 or 10% of people in your life who are capable of receiving your full depth. Give them everything. Give the rest a polite smile and a simplified version. Your deepest thoughts are not meant for everyone. They're meant for the few who can carry them. And now, Strategy 7. This is the most powerful insight Schopenhauer ever produced on the relationship between intelligence and stupidity. I saved it for last because once you understand this, you will never see another person the same way again. Strategy 7, the compassion paradox. Here's what nobody tells you about Schopenhauer. For all his brutal observations about human stupidity, for all his cutting remarks and savage criticism, his central philosophy was built on one word: compassion. Schopenhauer was the first major Western philosopher to place compassion, not reason, not duty, not self-interest, at the center of ethics. He argued that the ability to feel another person's suffering as your own is the highest expression of human morality. And this is the paradox that most people miss entirely. The same man who wrote the harshest critiques of human stupidity also argued that stupidity is not a choice. It is a condition. No one chooses their cognitive capacity. No one selects their IQ at birth. No one volunteers to misunderstand the world. Schopenhauer writes, "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people." Most unintelligent behavior isn't caused by a lack of brain power. It's caused by social conditioning, people suppressing their natural curiosity to fit in, abandoning independent thought to gain acceptance, choosing comfort over truth because the world punishes those who think differently. Sound familiar? That's exactly what happened to Schopenhauer himself. The Dunning-Kruger effect that makes unintelligent people overconfident? It's not malice. It's a cognitive limitation they didn't choose. The emotional argumentation that replaces logic? It's a defense mechanism born from a lifetime of not being equipped with better tools. The resistance to new ideas? It's fear, the terrifying prospect of discovering that everything you've believed might be wrong. The final strategy, the hardest one, the one that separates a merely intelligent person from a truly wise one, is to look at the people who frustrate you most and understand that they are doing the best they can with the cognitive tools they were given. Not to excuse harmful behavior. Not to tolerate abuse. Not to pretend ignorance is acceptable when it causes damage. But to release the resentment. To stop carrying anger toward people for a limitation they never chose. Schopenhauer spent decades frustrated with humanity. But his final philosophical position was not contempt. It was compassion. Deep, painful, radical compassion for a species that suffers precisely because most of its members cannot see clearly enough to stop creating suffering. He writes, "Compassion is the basis of morality. The ultimate strategy for dealing with unintelligent people is not manipulation, not avoidance, not superiority. It's understanding that intelligence without compassion is just another form of blindness, and that seeing the world more clearly than others comes with a responsibility, not just a burden." Schopenhauer's empty lecture hall wasn't a failure. It was proof that he was speaking to an audience that hadn't arrived yet. And when it arrived, it changed the course of human thought forever. Your depth is not a curse. Your intelligence is not a punishment. The loneliness you feel from seeing what others cannot see is not a flaw in you. It's the price of clarity. And the greatest thing you can do with that clarity is use it with compassion. Not because stupid people deserve it, but because compassion is what separates intelligence from wisdom. And wisdom, Schopenhauer taught us, is the only thing truly worth having. Let me bring this together. Strategy 1. Accept the cognitive gap without resentment. Strategy 2. Never argue below your level. Strategy 3. Simplify without dumbing down. Strategy 4. Protect your mental energy like it's finite because it is. Strategy 5. Become an observer and turn frustration into fascination. Strategy 6. Stop broadcasting to everyone and start narrowcasting to the few who matter. And strategy 7. Practice the hardest strategy of all, compassion for people living within limits they didn't choose. Schopenhauer stood in an empty lecture hall. The crowd was next door worshipping a philosopher whose work would be forgotten. The man they ignored changed the world. Now you see what most people spend their entire lives missing. Intelligence is not about being smarter than others. It's about knowing what to do with the gap. And what you do with it will define whether you become bitter or brilliant. If this video changed how you see every conversation you'll have from this point forward, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to keep learning what the world doesn't teach. And share this with the smartest person you know who has been feeling alone in a room full of people who can't understand them. They need this more than you realize. See you in the next one.